6:01. I'm calling the meeting of the Maple Run Unified School District Board of Directors for December 7th to order. As I said, at 6:01, we are at the MRUSD office and via Zoom. First item on the agenda is the agenda review. I have a couple of things to move, please. I want to move 8F to follow after 6D, so it will become 6D, I guess. Because we have it'll become 6E, sorry. And then I want to add another item called employment matter as 6F under new business.
You want that to be 8F, Nilda, for new business?
I want that to be 8F for new business. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, I said 6, but it was really 8. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me for a Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. So I have a message on this, my system that says the meeting is being recorded by a host or a participant.
Yeah, we record these for the.
I know, it's just a new message. I haven't seen this like this before. It's a big message. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, Aaron's saying it's fine.
Thank you. All right, so we're up to the visitor section. The public comment visitor section of the meeting is an opportunity for, one moment, please here. As far as this agenda review, I did want to request that the board allow me to change the order of things so that I can put our speaker with, that is section.
AC, did you hear Daddy? Whoa.
The speaker is at, where is it? Oh, F. 8F. We're going to move her to the beginning of, right after the reports to the board, so that she doesn't have to, if she doesn't want to, sit through the whole section. So when we get to that section of the agenda, I'll explain the details related to that. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I don't know who that person is, but okay. Okay, so the public comment visitor section of the meeting is an opportunity for community members to address issues of concern about policies, budget, and administrative matters, or to share ideas about how we can work together to improve our schools. We value input and respect divergent views. We ask you to limit your remarks to time constraints prescribed by the chair, which are going to be 2 minutes per topic, and refrain from airing grievances with individual members of the school community, including respecting the privacy of students and parents. Those attending remotely may type in their full name in the comment section along with their town of residence if they wish to speak. During the meeting, comments may be disabled. Do we have anyone present in the room other than our speaker who's designated later in the agenda who wishes to speak?
We do, Hilda.
Okay.
Rather than adjusting this mic too much, I suppose.
That's okay.
Is that sufficient?
Yep.
probably just for the,
It's more for the
I mean,
video.
exactly, I'm probably loud enough for the people in the room. My name is Jeffrey Nelson from Fairfield, and a year and a quarter ago, you acted as a board to mitigate the harm towards marginalized children in our district, harm that was posed by having armed subcontractors in our schools. There were many different stakeholders in our community that spent what I summed up to be hundreds of person hours for the study committee meetings, eight meetings or so times 12 to 15 people, listening and researching and wrestling with the thorny issues that our SRO program presented. I won't be able to properly summarize the meetings, nor should I. Those meetings are archived on our district's website for anyone to watch and read over, and I do appreciate that wealth of resources we have. There were, suffice to say, major institutional problems with our country, with our with our system of governance, of citizenry, and they didn't disappear over the past year. And obviously, equity, to my rude estimation and lacking a better success measure as an onlooker, was not achieved unless if I missed a memo that said that we're at parity and that those gaps disappeared, then I sit in error. To me, as an onlooker, the idea of a liaison program still makes sense. It is not a perfect fit from what, I don't know, no one ever represented that to be a perfect solution. But I respect that, among other things, I like the idea, as this is, and that it is literally more accountable to the school, the fact that someone is stationed there all day and not drawn away to other more pressing needs. The idea of a dedicated person under the employ of the school system without an additional level of administration is appealing to simplify things, what is otherwise an immensely complex and complicated and nuanced relationships. And I don't presume to really put any more of a knowledgeable spin on that than any of you have at Access, but just those are the two things that leap out at me as benefits.
We're at 2 minutes, sir, just so you know.
Oh, okay. And I just think that between the all the educational opportunities that everyone in the room has been offered and all the degrees we have in the education, what stands out is that the experiences of people and the research and the statistics are meant to take place, and they're meant to be authorities, and the lived experiences of people are meant to stand for something, and I would hate to see that that would get tossed aside in any degree of easy fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other speakers?
Anybody online?
We have Stephen LaRosa online.
Oh, hi. Yes, my name's Steve LaRosa. I was privileged to be a Maple Run board member when the school resource officer concerns first came to light in 2020. However, I did retire from the board prior to the vote that was taken to eliminate the SRO position. That said, I do support the board's decision to do away with the SROs and institute a liaison program. I understand that there are those who wish to see a return to SROs who would like to see this on the upcoming March ballot. I imagine the desire here would be to impress upon the board presumed support within the community for SROs. To be blunt, I think the board already knows this. The district held a community-wide survey in 2021, and the numbers showed an overall support for SROs. The board appointed study committee also proposed keeping them, albeit with a list of changes. Though I should note there were 2 committee members who did submit letters of dissent, both speaking for the need to remove SROs. And yet, with all this perceived support for SROs, the board, by a vote of 8-1, decided against keeping them. Now, I realize how surprising and upsetting this must have been for those supporting the program. However, I believe the board acted appropriately and rather courageously by upholding our district's core values that stress an environment where all can learn to achieve and succeed. As became evident in the evaluation of the SRO program, as well as from testimony from those within our community, any disparity, I'm sorry, I'm reading, of course, as well as from testimony from those within our community, any perceived sense of safety for some came at the expense of others. I think it is precisely because of this disparity that the board decided to eliminate the SROs and institute a liaison program. The fact that it is not a perfect system does not negate the need to continue to do the best we can without bringing armed officers back into our schools. Thank you for your time, and I wish everyone the best.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, anyone else in the room wish to speak? Anyone else on remote? wish to-
No, look, we're all good.
All right. Okay, so that concludes our visitors section of our agenda. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have approval of minutes and the media packet for your review. If anyone has any reason to pull any of those out for discussion, let me know. Hearing none, we'll approve the consent agenda. I'm going to turn this part of the meeting over to Nina, reports to the board.
Okay, student board representative report, gun violence prevention presentation. We're gonna have Leah.
So I don't really quite have many reports to the board. As I said last time, we had a BFA experience happen on Monday, which went very successfully. We had a lot of students, like prospective students, come in and a lot of positive feedback. And tomorrow we have our fine arts night. We have fall or winter sports starting, but otherwise we're going to give our presentation. I'd like to welcome Rachel here with me. So me and Rachel are part of Social Justice Club, and we were approached by students at Essex High School who are part of the Vermont chapter of Students Demand Action, who also made this presentation for us. And we kind of obviously learned the information, and we are going to give it out to you guys in hopes of approving a letter to be sent out to the school district to show the importance of secure storage with guns and whatnot. So we are going to go over some of the facts of that. So this presentation has a lot of raw data, and we're going to be reading some of that as to stress the importance of this data that is found by the Students Demand Action. We also would like to stress that there is some heavy topics, which is suicide and gun violence, so we encourage everybody to take care of themselves as they are going to be brought up. So on the next slide, this is a short video kind of showing why we're doing this and how real these stories are. It's okay. Basically, this video is a story of a mother talking about how her son got accidentally shot with an unsecured gun. So it's very real stories and just kind of the raw emotion that we wanted to show to everybody.
Do you want to watch it, the subtitles, or do you want we can pause and I can try and get this not working? What do you?
I don't know.
Give us subtitles. Okay. Yeah.
We are going to start, on the first topic is firearm suicide. So here's some nationwide statistics on the next slide. So 24,000 Americans die by firearm suicide every year. 3,100 of those are considered like youth, which is about 10 to 24. So youth and young adults. So American firearm suicide rate has increased 53% over the past 4 years. So another statistic is how prevalent suicide is. Suicide is the third leading cause of death for young Americans. As you can see, it's close to homicide. In Vermont, right now, suicide is almost as higher than homicide at the moment. This statistic was taken in 2020, which was well known as COVID, so it's a lot higher. The numbers in this slide is suicide is around 6,000, but around an average of 3,000 like I said in the last slide is about the normal amount. 88% of all firearm deaths in Vermont are because of suicides. So that just is another very large statistic for our state. So research shows that having access to a firearm triples one's risk of death by suicide. This elevated risk not only applies to the gun owner, but everybody else in the household. So it is the owner, it is the children, and everybody that is around firearms. And tripling it is a very big statistic. So, and lastly on this side, so suicide attempts involving a firearm, 4% result in death, and firearm suicide attempts, 90% result in death. So this statistic shows the correlation between firearm accessibility and successful suicide attempts. So again, we're going to put the stress on having secure firearms to show that correlation.
And then this next section is just in regards to gun violence in relation to COVID-19 and that pandemic. So next slide. So firearm purchases increased an estimated 64% from 2020 to 2019, or from 2019 to 2020 rather. Unintentional shootings by children that resulted in death increased by about 1/3 from 2019 to 2020. And then the prevalence of depressive disorder in 2020 was 4 times as high as in 2019, which really increases those rates. Then 80% of incidents on gunfire in school property, up to 80% of those shooters under the age of 18 got the gun from their house or the homes of friends or relatives, which would have been unsecured. Next slide. And then this is a chart of deaths in 2020 involving different causes, firearms, motor vehicles, cancer, etc. And as you can see, firearms are very high up on that list, higher than motor vehicle accidents and cancer, which just shows the amount of suicides as well as accidents and intentional gun violence deaths as a result of. And then researchers estimate that if half of households that store at least one unlocked gun move to lock all of their guns, 251 youth fatalities could be prevented in a single year.
So now we're just going to go over kind of what safe, secure storage looks like. And we have our SMART goals, as some of you guys may have heard. Secure firearms, model safe behavior, ask about firearms in other homes, recognize the role of firearms in suicide, and tell others about being smart. This is also written on the letter, which again we hope to send out to the district. And then we have one more model about kind of what that looks like, and what makes, on the next slide, what makes a firearm secured. So that is unloaded, locked, and separate from places. So that is our presentation, but we really just hoping to get that information out, show how important it is, and also to show that to the whole community on kind of that the board supports that and backs it, and is highly recommended. And again, we're not trying to have any opinion on guns or anything surrounding that. It is what is safe for the community and how can we keep students safe as well and have those conversations. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Any questions, comments from anybody? Jack, Nilda? And just to let you know, the letter she's talking about is attached, so if you haven't had a chance to read it, and then how soon were you thinking?
So if you wanted to take action to say as a board, you wanted to have your name, my name's on the bottom, I already said that I would endorse it as a superintendent, but if the board wanted to do that, you should take action as a board to say that you endorse this, and then we could do that and get the letter out.
Okay.
Is it spelled out someplace, not necessarily here, but someplace so that the public knows what is considered school property and what is not considered school property? In other words, we have a policy for school property, and we've dealt with that twice when it was in question. And I'm wondering, is that spelled out someplace so that the public knows? For example, the complex parking lot is school property?
Yes, well, we're posting signs on the complex.
Okay.
I would think the school grounds are self-explanatory that they're school property.
You would think.
I would think.
So what kind of action do we, because this wasn't, we didn't.
We didn't warn it on here. Lee and I were talking about that today. The practice of the board is to not usually take action on something unless it's warranted for action.
Yeah.
I think that's up to you as the discretion of the chair to say, do you want to take action tonight or do you want to postpone it to the next meeting?
If we don't, Bill, how long would it be? Like,
We're waiting to the 21st.
When were you guys wanting to get it out?
exactly.
Yeah, we will.
ASAP?
I mean, Nilda, what do you want to do?
We can always.
Well, I prefer not to take action on something that hasn't been warned. On the other hand, I see the value of having our names on the bottom of this letter. So I don't know if we want to break with our practice or.
No, I think we should follow practice. I mean, I'm not trying to delay this, but is that okay? Okay. All right. So next time we'll warn it and we'll just do it.
Yeah, we'll get it warned.
Okay.
Next time we'll do it.
Okay,
We'll send it
we'll do
right
it.
out the next day.
Thank you.
We have definitely proceeded with multiple situations without it being warned in terms of spending, budgetary things. I mean, there was a whole time period where we were doing that pretty regularly. We were finding out about things at a school board meeting and we were voting on it that day.
Oh, I
But
guess
it was warned, I believe.
we don't make a practice of doing that. All right, so we'll just make sure we make note and do that for next time, okay? But Leah, great presentation. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's definitely great information. I get goosebumps when anyway. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Leah. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Rachel.
Rachel, I'm sorry. Welcome, sorry. Usually you look at Ron.
So we'll be able to do that before school goes out of session.
Yeah, we have one more meeting.
23rd, the last day?
23rd is last day, 21st.
Okay, next, under reports to the board, grant funding. John?
1 second to get this presentation up.
Thank you.
This is 3 board meetings in a row. You guys are going to be sick of me soon. Thankfully, this one is a little bit shorter than the past couple of presentations. So grants and the programs affiliated with them at Maple run the gamut from incredibly small programs that are very time-bound to large programs that have major budgetary impacts, like the COVID relief funds, or the ones that virtually run without, or they're renewed every year almost automatically through the Consolidated Federal Grants Program. So some of the funding that we receive is not stable or is very time bound, and the other runs for an extended period of time. Some of it's a very small amount of money that we make use of for maximum impact. Some of it's actually quite a bit of money. And so with the variety of grants and the variety of impact across the district, we wanted to spend some time just with a quick walkthrough of where we are. especially with the ESSER funds, the COVID relief funds being approximately mid-cycle. So if you look at sorry, it appears I might be frozen here. Hold on, I'm gonna stop and share again. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why. I can't advance the slides. I'm glad this is not my first presentation to you.
No pressure.
Banking on the fact that this has previously gone without a hitch, that you'll extend me a little grace. Okay. So if we look at the grants, instead of listing them out one by one, which would be many, many pages, we usually consolidate them into different buckets for administration. So the first big bucket is the Consolidated Federal Grant Program, or Consolidated Federal Grants. A lot of people just refer to that as CFG or CFP. These are ones that we receive and take for granted that they come in year after year. They're long-term, stable funding sources for the school district. They generally increase each year, but they do not keep pace with inflation, right? So one of the things I'll talk about a little bit later is the perils of having staffing in these grants, because the cost for staffing over time increases at a substantially faster rate than the amount in the grants do. Then we have the ESSER, the COVID Relief and Recovery Funds. Those were one-time funds that were allocated through several different grants with different expiration dates on them. We've done previous presentations on those grants and the allocations for those. I'll give you some examples in a little bit. And then we've got all of the other grants. And they run the gamut from grants about special education to Perkins, which is focused on NCTC. There's smaller grants, like right now we've been the recipient, the nurses at Maple Run wrote a nursing leadership grant that they've received, and so there's a huge assortment of grants that fit into this pool. One thing that is related to staffing in the grants is really the purpose. So when we talk about where these grants come from, these long-term sources like the IDEAB, which is a special ed grant, or Medicaid, Perkins, the Consolidated Federal Grants programs, those are generally intended for specific purposes and not really for staffing in most cases. They're intended to help school districts implement new programs, because the state and the federal government recognize that implementation of new programs is more expensive. And so they try to provide assistance for new programs to start and then be implemented. For professional development, actually that's a huge focus in these grants. And then for the provisioning of essential supplies for specific purposes. What happens in school districts all around the country and all around the state of Vermont, and we are no exception, is that when local budgets get tight and we have issues that come in local budget, staffing positions sometimes get moved to grant programs to preserve services for students. And then what ends up happening is it's very hard when something comes out of the local budget to get it back in the local budget. And every year those staff positions take up a greater percentage of the grant programs. So that's just a consideration to have. And when you look at some of the programs or the impacts that these programs have on our district, there's a lot of staff positions. So I live and breathe these all the time, but it's worth just calibrating against the purposes. So Title I is the largest of the grants, and this is a grant program that is really designed to address inequities. So the awards for these are determined based off of free and reduced lunch counts in the district, and they don't cover all of the schools. So St. Albans Town Education Center does not qualify for Title I funds, and NCTC doesn't actually qualify for any of the Title funds. Title II is around improving instruction for all students. A big professional development focus, or at least that's the intent behind the grant, and we've been able to hold true to that to a large extent. This is a grant that applies across the district with the exception of NCTC. And Title IV, again, for the whole district, this is looking at a well-rounded education and improving the conditions in schools for learning. Again, looking at professional development, provisioning of new programs, and implementation. We, of course, have the IDEA programming, which is focused on special education and providing services for students. And there's quite a few other grants, but those are the big ones that we often get asked the most questions about. One thing that's important to know, and this generally holds true, there's a flow to the funding. Most of it is coming from federal funds that come through the state of Vermont and the Agency of Education. They're either awarded based off of formulas or applications to school districts like Maple Run, and then are distributed based on those criteria within the district itself. Some grants like Perkins are only NCTC can qualify as a tech center. Other grants can apply across the whole district, so each grant has its own kind of complicated formulas and qualifications that go with it, and then pretty exhaustive list of activities that are allowed and not allowed. What was that?
What's the Penguin? City School.
City School.
Yes, sorry, those are all the school logos on the side, right? That's great.
I really didn't know that.
Yep. So when we think about the Consolidated Federal Grant Program, which pre-COVID relief money was the largest single grant program for the district, these are some of the uses that we see coming out of that funding source. So transportation and supplies and all sorts of things related to the education of homeless students, professional development, and this funding is used both to build our internal capacity, but also to provide for external training or for external expertise that we don't have within the district yet. And then a newer development for us is the job embedded learning, which is the instructional coaches in the district. We also have several academic programs, and actually very key to those programs is the assessment platforms that they come with. So with Lexia, we have access to the Lexia Rapid Assessment, and with the Ready Math Classroom, we have access to the iReady Math Universal Screener Diagnostic. We also have quite a few staff positions that are paid for out of these grants. This is a list of the key positions. I did catch, so in your packet, the one in the middle, I have structured play coach, you have conscious discipline coach. There was a change in that position and I didn't update, right? I typed the wrong word into the PowerPoint that you saw, so I'm sorry for that error, but this is the correct link here. And then ESSER, as we know, is the largest grant with an impact on the budget right now, and certainly has provided for a lot of varied needs across the district. Initially, the focus was on responding to the immediate needs being presented by the pandemic, technology needs, sanitation needs, contract tracing. We all remember in our happiest time, but that was a hugely expensive program to operate. We expanded access to transportation across the districts. We increased access to pre-K. And then we made a major commitment as a school district to extending learning opportunities into the summer for students. And so that's actually a key part of the grant program for us. We've purchased new curriculum materials like the reading program for pre-K to 8. Again, facility improvements is a big chunk, especially the ventilation work that has to be done in the district to improve health and safety. We also have quite a bit of staff in here. The biggest line item here being the building substitutes. And that one just warrants a little explanation. So these are licensed teachers that we've hired to be available in the building so that we can maintain the continuity of instruction when we have staff absences. And that's not to say anything about the substitutes we normally have not being wonderful people, but there's a difference when you have a trained and licensed teacher that can be in the classroom to keep instruction moving according to the plans of that classroom. The other intent was to utilize these positions to help cover classrooms so that we could engage in the curriculum work that had been identified as part of our COVID response planning, our recovery plan. That had taken place last year. This year, we were not able to hold all of those meetings. Those positions are really required just to keep our buildings open. The Lighthouse program is the alternative program for VFA. And then we have quite a few other positions there. And then from that assorted other grant bucket, we have quite a few positions here. And so there's an asterisk next to the 14.5, and that is because many of these positions are only partially funded by the grant. Sometimes that's due to the financial restrictions of the grant. It might not be enough to pay for a whole position. Some grants have requirements that we engage in some form of matching, and so on and so forth. But there are some examples of some of those positions. So that's a crash course, a 10,000 foot view in terms of grants and programming. I'm happy to talk about anything.
Did a lot of these programs go away once, especially with ESSER? I mean, it does go out to the 2024. So what happens to the positions that, there's a lot here.
Yep, so especially with ESSER and those time-bound either positions or programs, we've been engaging in some planning as a district about, which ones are appropriate to let go, either because the need's not there or potentially it's not having the impact we want, which is truthfully not the case. But the other positions we have to figure out how to build into the local budget or move to other grants if it's necessary. And those conversations are happening right now as part of the budget.
Yeah, I would just add the reason to have this presentation right now is because we're in budget season.
Right.
And we're going to talk more later on about budget, but to have you all aware of where we're unstable with positions and what we need advice from the board. We don't need to look at the individual pieces, but when we start talking about budgetary figures, when we get to that part of the agenda, Martha and I are going to give you some more numbers information to be able to say, so how do we have some direction about where to go and affect our budgetary presentation in the local budget. But we have quite a few staff, as we've heard from you as a board, wanting to provide the needs that students have, and a lot of that's based on grants outside the academic.
John, back at the beginning on your grants out of Gwinnett, I didn't want to stop you then because things were rolling pretty good and I didn't want to be responsible for stopping the whole process. You had two percentages there. Could you explain that? One was 20.9 and 4.2.
Yeah, so I don't know. I like percentages in general, so I put them down there. So one is if you look at ESSER as a percentage of our annual budget right now.
Okay.
But the reality is it's a multi-year grant. So the other one is if you look at it as a percentage of our grant each year.
Okay.
And that one is an approximate number because the budget grows a little bit each year. So
Thank you.
Ryer, did you have a question?
I just wanted to, you said the building substitutes, which is something I heard of recently, and it's really cool. They're all licensed?
yes, I believe they all are licensed. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yes, they are licensed. The reason I say I believe is because I don't work in HR and I actually check the paperwork.
Totally got you. No, totally got you. That's fair.
John, you also said, oh,
That's a
sorry.
question.
Yep, go ahead, Nelda.
I don't want to interrupt anyone.
No,
Can you put that-
go ahead. Go ahead.
It's related to this table. So if I look at this table, I can sort of do the math real quick and say right now over 25% of our budget is funded by grants.
Well,
No.
ESSER is not part of this grant, is not part of our voted budget.
Right.
Just want to be clear.
Martha, why don't you pull the microphone a little closer to you, and Martha, maybe.
So I just want to be clear that consolidated federal programs is included in our voted budget. ESSER is not, and some of the other grants are included in the voted budget, but they're not all included in the voted budget.
Okay,
These
I don't have any
percentages are
questions, I
context.
no longer have a question.
Okay.
Does anybody else online have any comments, questions? I just had one, John. You talked about Title I, and I know this has been talked about in the past about the free lunches the kids are getting now. But SATEC doesn't seem to be part of that after we get past the funding that's happening this year. Why is that still it's not considered as a MRUSD as opposed to individual schools?
So there's a few different ways schools qualify. There's a few ways that schools can qualify, and if I'm being honest, the pandemic has upended all of them. Because school meals have been made free, and so what we've actually seen is a pretty steep drop off in the number of completed free and reduced lunch applications we get, because lunch is free for everybody. So the way the agency has responded is by actually holding schools harmless. So each year now, when we log in since the pandemic started, we are able to look at the different data sets for each year. And if we don't feel like the years during COVID accurately represent the poverty levels in our school, we're able to use our pre-pandemic free and reduced lunch rates to qualify. And that is what we are doing currently at MRUSD. The legislature and the agency have been in talks about how they will be able to gather this information, because the hope and goal is that moving forward, long-term food will continue to be free for all students in Vermont schools. But I haven't seen the answer yet.
Yeah, so I think I'd like to see it too.
And the federal requirements for Title I grants is by the school level. It's a federal requirement, so they don't do it by district. It's done by the actual building. We could be in a metropolitan, we could be in New York City, and they do it by every individual school within the city district.
So that's why it's important to fill out the paperwork.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Regardless if they qualify for it or not?
Well, the filling out the paperwork will then give us a truer understanding of what the percentages are out there of the free and reduced. You still have to qualify as a free or reduced applicant.
Right.
But yes.
But it's just more informational
If
to
you-
qualify for the title, to qualify the school, right? Okay.
Yeah, you have to
'Cause
have
yeah.
at least 40% for Title
40%.
Yeah.
40% free and reduced, and I think SATEC right now is in the 20-ish%.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
And I will just say, from working with the school coordinators for this, there are people every year that fill out the form thinking they're not going to qualify, but they want to help the school out and find out they qualify. So it's not a given that people do or don't qualify, so we just encourage everybody to fill it out.
Yeah, no, it's a good, because I'm guilty of not doing it, so sorry.
So, question, we have grant funds that we're using, I think, from understanding, to pay for items that are budgeted in the voter-approved budget.
There are some, yes.
Okay, and so we still spend all of our voter-approved budget.
Yes.
And so that would mean that that whatever we're spending from the grant funds is being offset by essentially non-budgeted expenditures in order to still meet that level, right?
Well, let me just backtrack a little bit. They are in our voted budgets, but they are all reimbursable grants, so you have to spend it to get the money.
Okay.
So, I
So
don't know if
that's
that-
maybe why we budget, is so that we can spend it so that we can get the reimbursement as a grant later on?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Do the I guess, salary or the staffing money that we're talking about that relate to the positions, do those fall kind of in that category of needing to spend it in order to get reimbursed for it?
They fall in the category where we expense them to the grant.
Yeah.
And anything that we expense to the grant, we get reimbursed for.
Okay,
So if they're not expensed to the grant, we would then, if we're gonna have them on staff, we have to pay for them out of the local budget. If we didn't budget for them out of the local funds,
right,
we're then running in a deficit.
okay. So, because there's that, sort of allocation, opportunity, right? If those grants weren't present, they would still be budgeted. Those positions would still be budgeted, but you would,
They,
how, I mean, how does that, there's something here that's not adding up for me.
Okay,
It feels like there are things that we budget, that could be spent, that we could spend grant money on, but instead we spend grant money on other things that are also budgeted. Is there just not enough stuff that qualifies for the grant in the budget?
yes.
That we can spend the entire grant on okay. And so we spend it on other things that qualify but aren't necessarily.
Let me help you this way.
Yeah.
The budget has, let's just use some rough numbers, 64 million this year.
Yeah.
58?
58 is low.
58, we get 58 million of our revenues-ish. I'm using round numbers here.
Yeah, sure.
From local revenues from the state.
Okay.
Because we get all our funding, even though you said the tax rate based on it for Maple Run, this is the confusing.
The yield and the.
Yeah, we're gonna stay away from all that.
Sure.
Complicated. I know we'll get into it somewhere
That's a
in the next
future
3
meeting.
meetings. Yeah, it is a future meeting, the next 2 or 3.
Yes.
We'll get into it. But that money just assume it comes from the state. The difference, so the $6 million difference has to come from other revenues.
Right.
Some of that, about 2 million, right, comes from tuition.
Yeah.
So Leah's town, Leah lives in Georgia, so her town, for Leah, spends the tuition that you all approved last year for the rate, for Leah, I'm sorry to pick on you a little bit, but I figured I'd know you. So that's how, so we have 2 million in tuition, so now we're up to 60.
Yep.
Okay, I'm doing round numbers here, just so don't.
Yeah,
Thank you.
don't hold them to those numbers.
Don't hold them to those numbers.
I'm keeping track, 58 plus 2.
Yeah, so, 4 seems a little high.
Yeah, that's a little high.
4 is a little high, but let's just say it's 4 for right now, comes from other grant or other revenue sources. There's some other minor things that aren't grants, that aren't tuition, but I'm trying to get to the major things. And then you've got, and then there's like reimbursement for transportation, like all this other pile over here. And then, John's showing you about, if you look at the top and bottom figure of it, consolidated federal and other grants. Now, not all the consolidated federals is in the budget, not all the other grants.
Right.
But there's about 3 million there. And that's coming in and that's programmed in the budget.
Okay.
If we didn't get that money,
Right.
I would have the hard decision to work with the board to recommend these are either gonna make equalized cuts in the budget, or you're gonna give authority to me to go beyond the local revenues and go into deficit spending, which is like superintendent 101, don't do it.
Yeah, right. This was board 101 too.
Yeah, it's board 101 too, right. We don't spend more than we get. That's Vermont. If we were in New York, it's happening, many other states, that's happening all over the place. I don't wanna be there, I like where we're at fiscally and literally. But I hope that helps a little bit. That's kind of it's that idea that we know, we are expecting, we're pretty sure those consolidated federals, John said, some of the idea, it'd be the big ones, we know that money's coming, so we plan for it in the budget.
Right.
Some of the other grants, we're not so sure.
And those are the ones that we don't include in the budget.
Right, and then the ESSER, we know has a time bound, so we weren't gonna put that in there.
Okay.
I hope that helped.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? Okay. Reports to the board, C.
Well, actually, can I say one more thing? I
Sure.
guess in the coming year, I suppose, or in this budget season, but then also once ESSER money is no longer, then maybe as we're thinking about our reports, right? We account for added positions from ESSER especially within the reports. knowing what things were like prior to the ESSER money versus what things were like post ESSER money in terms of, you know, data, you know, right? If we're talking about progress, if we're talking about safety, if we're talking about whatever, we would need to know what it looked like before we had those positions. And then what it looked like once we had those positions, to then be able to make the decision as to which positions we keep when we have to make those decisions, right? Versus not. In terms of what was for catch-up versus what needs to be there for sustained reasons going forward.
That is our work. That is our work. And we're actually doing that work next week as a leadership team to come to you and say, these are the positions that are not in the, I'm getting into the budget item right now. So if you can hold all that till we get to the budget item on the report, I can get more into this.
I can hold it. I was just saying, I was just saying something to consider for future reports, you know, coming back to us, because, I mean, I'd like to see that information, not just rely on somebody telling me that this is what is needed, you know, right, we need to see that information going forward. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Joanna. Anybody else? All right, 6C, enrollment demographic report. Bill?
I'd be glad to answer any questions. I'm just trying to provide, these are things for you for budget time, so that you see the enrollment and how that's trending, and the same as for 6D, the staffing demographics. I will tell you the major change in the enrollment is that we're getting more diverse as a district. We actually had quite a bit of change there, from about 9% to 14%, non-white racial diversity, and our population is staying within the realm of movement we've had the past 4 or 5 years. That's largely being offset by a big pre-K population. You'll see there's a dip in the younger grades, K through 3. There's actually quite a bit of a dip, and that will affect when we talk next time or in January about our equalized pupils.
Any questions, comments about those two reports?
Thank you.
Okay, and then 6E, Nilda, were you going to take that one? Sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
No, I've got that one. So little different here in this section of our reports. Bill and I received a request from a community member, Amanda Giroux, to put the question of the SRO in our schools on the ballot at the next election. So that was kind of new to me. Bill and I talked about it. We decided that it was worthy of getting a legal opinion to determine what our rights are, what the community's rights are, and what the law allows to happen. You should have in your packet a copy of that opinion, which you should look very closely because it's very specific. As part of this discussion, in order to do justice to the request and allow for our community member to be heard, we invited Amanda Giroux, who I believe is present there, to give a report on why she would like the discussion of the SRO going to a budget vote to be discussed, because as a group, as you all know, we processed this, we reviewed it with a subcommittee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the question before you at the end of her presentation is going to be, do we even want to continue discussing this, knowing what our legal opinion is? So it's a little tricky there, if you understand the words. We're not discussing whether we're gonna put an SRO on the ballot tonight. If we decide tonight that we want to have this discussion, it would go on the next agenda. And we would have that discussion at that agenda and carry on from there. If you look at the legal opinion, we have, in order to meet our statutory requirements, we have to, the community and us, we just have to make sure we have the right people elected in the positions that will do what is deemed the wishes of the, is it called the electorate? I don't know, probably too fancy a term for St. Albans, but so I just want Amanda to understand what we're doing. I want the board to understand what we're doing and everyone that's present to understand what we're doing tonight. So there's not going to be a whole lot of Q&A here. There's just going to be the opportunity for Amanda to state her position very clearly. She's had a week, just almost a week, I think, to plan for this. And I'm kind of putting you on the spot, Amanda, but before I bring you up, does the board understand what our plan is?
Nilda, just for everybody's FYI, the petition, or the letter she's referring to is 8F, if you guys haven't read it yet.
Thanks, Nina. So we're talking, just to kind of beat this, we're talking process here. We're not talking SRO yes or no. Tonight, we're talking process. You get it?
We're talking about whether we should talk about it?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because we've talked, and Peter, just to sort of add to that kind of commentary, I mean, because it's our position that we've talked about it, right? So I think that that's what we have to sort of process. And, I'm not going to speak anymore. Amanda, I'm going to give you, well, how much time do you think you need, Amanda?
Not too long, 2 minutes.
5 minutes?
No, probably not even.
Okay, all right, so Amanda, tag, you're it. Welcome to the board meeting. Thank you for agreeing to come and speak.
Thank you for having me. I'm Amanda Giroux. I live in St. Albans town. I'm here to ask for the consideration to put the SRO program on the ballot for the voters to vote on within the community. I don't believe all voices were heard, and I believe some opinions have changed. The liaison program, from what I believe, wasn't the end-all be-all. I'm not saying to put the SROs back where they were, exactly where they were, modifications, training, of course, something within our schools because they were taken out and not replaced. As of right now, there's been no other staff put on, no counselors that were suggested. Those who opposed to the SRO suggested money be spent elsewhere. Nothing else was added, it's just removed. And I think that the taxpayers of the community should vote on it. It's our tax dollars, and I want to know what is being spent on for the safety of my child and all of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. So, has everybody had the opportunity to read the legal opinion? There's a section that I'd like to refer you to. We have our, the way I read this, and Bill, I need you to jump in here because you actually had the conversation with the attorney. But what I'm understanding from reading this opinion is we've already done our work. We did our work. We had a process. We defined a process. Now, are we required by law to put something on a ballot because a petition becomes forward to us? I believe the answer is no, according to this opinion. Did you see that, John? That question that just popped up?
Yes, I did just see that. So a few people have asked if they could have access to the document that has the legal opinion.
It's all out, it will be out there, it's public.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yes,
if-
so the answer is yes, yes.
Okay, so that's kind of the question for me. Now, Amanda does bring up some good points, right? Like, we said we were going to follow up, and what have we done for follow-up? And while we've been asking for reports on that, we get regular information from leadership. I don't know if it's spelled out in dollars and cents like she's looking for, but I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. I'm going to stop talking now because I'm at risk of showing my hand. So I'd like to open it up for discussion about whether or not we're going to have this discussion. And I know that's kind of an awkward way of saying it, but I'm sure y'all have ideas and things you'd like to say.
I'll start.
Go ahead, Brian.
So for a year and a half, I came to school board meetings asking for no SROs in school. That was me. I was at almost every single school board meeting for a year and a half. I went to the SRO committee meetings. This was a long process. It didn't just pop up overnight. This was a long process. It's been talked about and talked about and talked about and talked about. And so now we're in a place where there's a petition and people are getting signatures to try to put it on a ballot. Okay. It's easy to get a petition. It's easy to get signatures on a petition. That's a very simple thing to do. It doesn't show necessarily that people are super interested in it. It just shows that people are like willing to put their name on a piece of paper. Now, according to the legal opinion, it seems pretty clear that even if to be required to put it on a ballot, you would need to get 5% of the legal, not even that.
So I'm gonna, Nilda asked me to speak to this. I want to make sure I'm really clear about the legal.
Okay, I appreciate that.
The opinion of your attorney said that the board, no matter how many signatures, the board is not required to put something on the ballot due to a petition. This is school law, it's not municipal law.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Oh, the 5% is.
That's municipal law.
That's municipal law. Oh, okay.
Now, while we are a municipality, we are overseated by school Title 16.
Okay.
And so Title 16 at times takes away some of the things that happen, because schools are municipalities too, where Maple Run is a municipality just as St. Albans City, Town, or Fairfield. But in this case, and looking back, he actually referenced in his text here, a case with South Burlington School District versus Skiff from 2018. And when there was a petition that came. And it was cited in that case law from there that they do not have to accept a petition with any number of signatures. The board does not need to do it.
And even if we put it on the ballot and it passed, it would still be our responsibility to approve it.
That's,
it would
the,
not
other,
be,
that's the other part of the opinion.
Okay.
That you could have as many. And so, because there were two questions I asked, knowing this, and this was actually about a month and a half ago when I had heard, if you look, you'll see the document saying I was hearing this was happening. I wanted to get some background for the board. Would the school district, my questions were, how many signatures would it need to take for a petition to put something on the ballot? And would the school district clerk that confirms the signatures, the registered voters? So right away he said, it doesn't matter the number of signatures, you don't have to do it. His second question that he went into, anticipating what my next one would be in a response in this letter, was given the answer that you do not have to put anything on the ballot, if you choose to, he's basically saying you're more in a political bind than you are a constitutional bind or a legal bind. Because if you give to the voters the appearance that they get to vote on something, and the board chooses not to follow it, then you're in a political situation. So you're giving powers that the electorate does not have. You're not giving the power, but you're making the appearance of power to the electorate. Because in Vermont statute, and this is where this comes up, they don't have the right to petition, is very succinct about what powers the electorate has. They have the powers to do basically 3 things: real estate transfer, budgets, and elect school board members to run the schools.
And that's what they vote.
And that's what they vote on. That's his opinion that he wrote to you.
To me, and I understand what he's saying, I do get that, but we're putting ourselves in a scary situation where we're saying, here's a topic that we don't want to talk about, and we don't want to even hear the public opinion on it. Considering particularly that a number of the public has the wrong impression of what the SRO study committee came out with. We've had people come here and say, you heard the study committee and you followed their, no you didn't. They wanted SROs to a different degree and we did away with it. We voted on something that wasn't discussed, was never even mentioned by the study committee. So for us to say to the public, we want you to approve our tax dollars, pay your bills so that we can run our schools, but we're not interested in what you have to say on something that's very important to them. I think we're putting ourselves in a horrible situation.
We are interested. They are allowed to speak every single meeting.
Absolutely.
We hear from them every single meeting. I mean, that's.
But are we
that's
hearing them? That's the other piece. We're hearing few, but I think a lot of people, and I know that people have come to me personally, are scared to step up because they're scared of, you know, the ramification that will come with that. Or people who are in schools who are afraid to come and say, well, I work at the school, so I don't know that I should really say something. And I think people were under the impression that a liaison officer was going to be in every school, and that's not happening. There's nothing in SATEC, there's nothing at St. Albans City School, there's nothing at Fairfield. It's all it's just, I don't think, the liaison program definitely isn't what people, I think, or what most people thought it was going to be. I think they thought it was going to be more, and now that we've given it a chance, I think it's fair to say, let's look at it again, and let's see what the voters and the taxpayers and the parents.
Well, point of order, we're not talking about whether or not we're gonna open it up, we're talking about whether or not we're gonna consider.
Right.
Whether we're going to talk about it.
Right, whether
a
we're.
vote.
Right.
So that's a little bit different.
I would agree with that, and I guess my opinion on it is that people are welcome to come here and to share their thoughts and feelings about it every single school board meeting. And I think that we have, and I think we are still in the process of creating a process where we are not just letting people speak, that we are listening to what people have to say, and that we hope to be able to provide feedback to them at some point once we have, you know, hashed out our public speaking piece of meetings. But I think that this is not a popular vote issue. That's
Yeah, so
not
I would say
what it
that,
is.
you know,
I'm not, could you explain it? I'm not sure what you mean by popular with who? With the public, with us? I understand what you mean by that.
It's not about how many people might feel that now that the SROs are no longer in the schools, that they'd like them back into the schools. The study was conducted to look at the safety issues and ramifications on students, what's best for kids.
Mm-hmm.
So what's best for kids, best practice versus what people might want to see happen may not be the same thing. It may not add up to the same thing. I mean, that goes with lots of.
But after the study, wasn't it recommended that we keep SROs just in a different capacity?
We're getting off topic again. I think we need to kind of.
That's my interpretation.
Hey, Grant, did you have something you wanted to say?
well, I was just gonna say that I would say that I support the discussion, so this is the discussion to decide if we should discuss, right? And so I would support that further discussion in the hopes that, kind of along the lines of what Joanna was saying, that it might evolve into some discourse on what to do when public opinion is at odds with what we consider to be an equitable policy, and what to do in those situations.
Okay. So looking at just like a straw vote here, not an official vote, would you all want to have this discussion at the next board meeting? Yay or nay? Put your hand up if you think you would say.
Nilda, wait a second.
Nilda, before you do that, there's been a question that's come up, the same question from 3 people in the meeting room.
Okay.
They're just looking to find out more information about changes that have been made as a result of the decision the board made, about whether or not there are counselors in schools or if the district liaison is limited in some way. I've advised them that that would generally, those kind of comments or questions would generally be addressed during public comment or the visitor section, but they've requested that I raise them now.
Tell them we'll follow up with them. Let's just follow up with them. Thanks, John. Nilda, why don't you go ahead?
So what's the pleasure of the board here?
Nilda, can we just restate what we're trying to do? We're
Okay, I'm looking to see, I mean, I could take an official vote, but I'd like to get a sense of where we're at first, just to see if we have to have more discussion. I'm looking to see if it's the pleasure of the board to put this on the agenda next meeting for discussion.
But it's a discussion to have the SRO on the ballot, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is anybody opposed to doing that?
To put it on the ballot?
No, have the discussion.
Have to have a discussion. But I feel like the legal opinion is pretty clear that that isn't something we should do. I mean, I think the
That's exactly
saying we shouldn't do it.
That's what, yeah, exactly.
So I'm confused about why we would discuss it.
So, and then that we would, if
We're
we say
discussing
no.
it now, right?
Well,
For the sake of transparency, for the sake of,
Somebody came with a question.
giving it the attention that it's been, asked to have been given.
and give people an opportunity to read the opinion maybe a little bit.
No.
So Milton, you want to take a non-binding referendum of the board here?
I just want to ask a question. Are we going to do this every time someone submits a petition? Like, is that what we're setting up to do now? Because I think we need to be clear about.
That's a really good question, Brian.
I think we need to be clear about what we're doing, because.
Really good question.
I don't think
You
it's
know,
setting precedence. I don't, because we don't get,
But
no.
even if it was, that's a form of community engagement that I think we should
Yeah.
be encouraging.
You know, I think you said it earlier, Ryer. We spent a bucket load of, when I say we, the board, the community, the people on the subcommittee spent a bucket load of time on this project. And so when you get a request to put it back on the agenda, you kind of go, oh, right? And then I thought, well, I want to honor her request. And Amanda Giro was very polite, very, very proper in her request and stuff. And when Bill and I talked about it, it's like, we've got to give this some momentum, right? Because it's an opportunity for someone to give a presentation. I'm nervous about putting it on the agenda to have a discussion and going the route where we say yes, because then we're stuck in that situation where we're going to have to go against our legal opinion, or worse yet, we're going to have to get a vote that might not match our legal opinion. And then what do we do, right? So Ryer, I share all your concerns on this. And I don't know how we fix it unless you.
I don't think we can fix it. I think we just need to, I'm agreeing with you. The opinion's very clear, but we have to let people read this too. I don't think it's a one and done tonight. I really don't.
Yeah. I mean, I just know that, like,
because I'm not.
I wasn't
I'm not for this.
when I was talking about this, right? No one was given an opportunity to come and present to this board.
Right, I guess that's my confusion.
Did this for a year and a half.
And I never was asked, hey, would you like to give a presentation to the board?
Right,
So I'm confused about why this is a thing now. And
Amanda
so-
came to us.
right, and so but what my confusion is,
But, Ryer, I'm not trying, but did you say you wanted to do a presentation?
I came and asked repeatedly, like over and over again, to talk to the board, yes. As an
And you
email.
did?
In my 2 minutes.
Yeah.
yeah, that's my confusion. My confusion is why,
But
I don't
this isn't
understand.
an SRO yes or no. This is, the conversation because I want to make clear, this is a conversation that put this on the ballot.
I hear you, I really do.
Mhm.
And I'm still stating my confusion. And my confusion stands, is that I don't understand, and with all due respect, I appreciate you coming, I love when people come here and want to talk and want to voice their opinion, whether I agree with it or not, it doesn't matter. I think people have a right to do that. I'm confused as to why it's different on the agenda. I don't understand why Amanda wasn't just encouraged to come and speak as a guest in the beginning, like everybody else, because then we aren't forced to come up with some kind of reply when we haven't had a conversation about it. So this puts us in an awkward, I think it puts us into an awkward position where we have to come up with a response, whereas when people come as guests, we don't, right? And that's part of the conversation that we have had over and over and over again about making sure that we are providing people with feedback instead of just, they come, they present, and we're not even allowed to say thank you, only the board chair is allowed to say thank you. So it doesn't seem consistent here. This is inconsistent for me. Or I'm not understanding something. I don't know.
Well, Joanna, maybe this is a step in the right direction. in that regard.
I'm not suggesting it's not. I'm just saying I'm taken off guard.
I agree.
So thanks for saying that, Grant, because I think, in the spirit of process improvement, Bill and I talked a lot about this, okay? Because we spent a lot of time a couple years ago, as you all know, I didn't spend all that time, but I did go through all the meetings and all the records, and then at the end, read through everything. And it just, I don't know, it gave me sort of a funny thing in my gut, to put this forward again. Didn't quite feel right without giving it some extra attention. So if I erred on the side of, oh my God, we've never done this before, and it causes a problem in the future, I'll take that hit, because like Grant said, I think this might be a step in the right direction. And, if we didn't do that before, apologies to those who didn't, get the benefits of process improvement, but I don't know, I'm rambling, so I guess I'll stop talking.
No, but you asked me to say this at some point, and I'll say it right now. As your superintendent, if you waver to giving into people with petitions and ballot items, you'll really lose the strength of yourselves as boards. What does that put on the put on? It puts on your positions on the board up to vote. That's up to you as a board, but it will make you a lot weaker as a board. Because you in Vermont statute, you were put on to oversee the running of the school district as a board.
But that doesn't mean we can't ask their opinion before we make a decision.
If you put it on the ballot, you are, in my opinion, releasing your responsibility and really giving a power that is not there for the electorate, and it will be perceived as that power.
But Bill, that's something that we would consider in the future discussion, I think, that we're talking about.
Well, we're talking about whether to have the discussion. It's about the ballot item, not about the SRO.
Right.
I'm talking, and that's what this discussion tonight, the way I understand it, is about whether to have that discussion, to have it on the ballot.
Right.
Not about, that's what I thought tonight, not whether SRO is a good piece, it's about whether you're gonna have the discussion about the SRO. This is about, right now, it's about the ballot, and about giving that power, perceived power to the electorate, which they don't have.
I have a hard time being part of a board that doesn't want to hear what the public has to say about anything. I would really struggle with that.
And I'm not saying that.
So Bill,
Yeah.
play this out with me. let's say the board agrees to have the discussion at the next board meeting. We have that discussion, it's gonna go one of two ways, either it goes on the ballot or it doesn't go on the ballot. Let's say the vote is to not have it be on the ballot. That kind of ends it. And haven't we at that point done our due diligence about having the discussion related to it?
You may have, yes, but the voters may say, okay, then the way to have that influence is through positions of the board positions, and the ones that are on the ballot.
So the agenda item is discuss if the board should discuss adding an SRO to the ballot.
Yes.
I think what you're talking about, Bill, would come up as part of that discussion. We may decide, no, we don't want to add that to the ballot. We may decide we don't ever want to add anything to a ballot. But that's the discussion that would take place in the future, I think.
So that discussion could take into excuse
Maybe I did not word that.
could take into
I
play
think it's
the
the same page, but
legal opinion. Right, Bill? We could have that discussion at the next meeting and we talk about it. We share the legal opinion again and say, okay, based on this legal opinion, it's not to our advantage to do this.
Yeah, but at that meeting, we're gonna say yes or no, we should put this on the ballot. That's what you're saying?
Correct.
Yes, we'll listen, so that's the discussion. Okay.
Yeah.
And we can't do that tonight, why? Just because we want to give people time to look at it?
Because what we warned is discuss the discussion.
Okay.
no, do we need to table, I mean, maybe we need to table that discussion also pending the outcome of a discussion on ballot items in general. I don't know, I don't think we have a policy there. Maybe we should.
Ballot items related, I mean, our ballot items are related to the budget.
I would say,
Ballot,
so I just.
giving up the powers of the board on the ballot.
So, from my knowledge, most of the ballot items are governed through statute.
Yes. And but now we're talking about adding things to a ballot that are not governed through statute. That may be a bad idea across the board. Maybe we need to have a discussion of that before we consider an individual case.
Yes, but if we were gonna take like what do they call it when you have to borrow money from the bank to do a building project? If we had to do that, we'd put that on the ballot.
That's a bond, yeah.
What did I say?
That's also by statute.
That's right. As I was saying it, I realized that. Why did I make you laugh though?
Because she said alone. It's
No. Okay.
That's fine.
All right, where are we at?
Can I interject? Like, I just wanted to like put it on the ballot just because I think that's the safest way for people or for the board to gauge people's opinions, because where else better than the voting station? I mean, you can send out surveys, you can send out, people, it says Google, whatever, I'm not gonna, I don't have Google, I'm not gonna take it, I'm not gonna, the ballot, it's, confidential, one way or the other, then you can move forward from there, because a lot of people don't think that the liaison program is quite enough. The SRO program may be too much for some people, but there's not, I don't feel, a happy medium there. That's what I'm trying to.
So I would be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just for the record, we're not doing a Q&A here, so we've got to just kind of like move forward. And, again, for the record, as far as surveys and ballots and all of that, those things were done on this topic once before. That doesn't mean we wouldn't get a different representation if we were to do it again or not, but they have been done. Are we ready to vote on the actual agenda item that says that we're gonna vote on whether or not to discuss it?
Well, I don't, there's no vote, Milda, it's just, you're just gonna poll, right?
Well, I did a poll, but I didn't get anything, so I'm now wondering if I should just get a motion and take a vote.
I think we need to clarify what, I mean, if Bill just said a few minutes ago that maybe he didn't write the agenda item clearly
Yeah, well,
enough.
that's my fault.
No, I'm not
No, but I
criticizing
mean, I
you.
think you go forward and have.
I'm
a
saying that
discussion.
I think that we should be clear on what we're voting on. I mean, to me, it's a very different conversation to vote to put the SRO on the ballot, whether or not to put an SRO back in the schools.
We're voting
versus-
to have the discussion, Joanna, excuse me for interrupting. We're voting to have the discussion. It'll be an action item on the next agenda. So the action item would be, we have the discussion and there's a product at the end of the discussion. Either it goes on the ballot or it doesn't. That's how I see it.
I know, and I am not going to vote yes to have a conversation to put the SRO back on the ballot. I would vote yes to have a conversation to look at the liaison position. And that is why I asked for a board report that I didn't really think we got what I was kind of looking for. And I think that's
Okay,
partially on me.
We're going down a different road.
So can we adapt it slightly instead of
I don't think
having a
we're going down
discussion,
different roads, we are.
instead of having a discussion of whether or not to put the liaison or the SRO on the ballot, can we have a discussion of whether or not it's appropriate to put anything other than what's statutorily required on the ballot?
That's great. Let's do that.
I'd like to be more specific because that's what we're talking. Let's not try to avoid what we're talking about.
No.
By covering it up and saying, well, what are we actually talking
I mean,
about?
it covers it, Grant, that does cover it, but,
Yeah.
Bill,
So
aren't there some other?
That would then that would then be, have the opportunity to branch, right? So, if you decide that yes, right, we as a board would like to get feedback from the electorate in that way, then that opens up, and now we have the dedicated discussion to this one.
So do we, sorry.
If we decide that no, as a board, we don't want to get feedback in that way, then we need to talk about how do we want to get feedback. And, and then maybe we are willing to open up the discussion again, but not necessarily because of a petition or if there's a more, a better way of doing that. I mean, maybe instead of petitioning it on the ballot, we like to petition the board to, open up a discussion. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that this could work out, that it still gets some attention, that the topics get attention from the board without the, without going to the vote.
So my fear is, and I know you have to do what, 45, it has to be noted 45 days before the ballot comes out, right? So if this is what the voters are asking for, and this is what we decide, yes, we want to, right? Are we going to have enough time if we're continuing to put it off?
January 30th.
Yep.
Right, but I'm saying if we say, well, first we need to have this discussion, then we need to have this one, like, it kind of just feels like we're.
I think you start kicking the can down the road, which is what we did for a long time, and we've got something before us. Let's talk about it. And if it goes before the voters and they say they want it, and as a board we say we don't, you have that right to do it. This doesn't say you must listen to them. It says you don't have to listen to them. And if you say, we value your opinion, however, we're looking at for the minority, because that's our job. We're looking at a select group, we're taking care of them, that's our job. Then we need to have the courage to do that if that's what we believe. So you need to at some point stand up.
I'm getting a sense it is the consensus of the board that this item goes on the next agenda.
I would like.
It's not an action. It's actually not an action item, so we don't have to take an actual vote. But I'm not hearing a lot of opposition to putting it on the agenda.
I'm opposed to put it on the next agenda as is.
Me too.
I think what should go on the next agenda is the discussion of non-statutory ballot items in general.
Okay, but for some reason, I feel like there are some non-statutory ballot items that school boards have pushed toward the vote before. Am I wrong, Bill?
I do not, I'm looking at Martha to see it, because she's the longest history here, but I do not believe there's been one in Maple, at least in Maple Run's history, and then I'm thinking back into the Franklin's. I don't think there's been anything that's been non-statutory.
Okay.
I haven't done the research, but I want to clearly state, I have not done the research.
Okay, well, if that works, that's even a better angle to approach the whole subject matter, right? Because that would also allow us not to set a precedent that somebody was worried about doing at one point if can't. Does someone get Grant's wording down close enough?
Grant, can you just state your?
Did you get anything, Aaron? Sorry.
Aaron, you have Grant's words for that?
Yeah, so on the agenda would be a discussion of the board's willingness to put non-statutory items on the ballot.
And Nilda, since you're chairing, would you like research done before the next meeting? I'm not sure how far back we can go, but to look at.
Yeah, I mean, if there's no institutional knowledge, it's gotta have been, since, dirt with the baby, so, but it'd be worth doing a quick research
Yeah,
just to make sure.
let's take a look at full ballots, just to,
Thank you.
yeah. Because I do not want to give you my summation without doing the work.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for that energetic discussion. All right, where are we?
Do you want to do? Yeah, okay. Number 7, old business, implicit bias and anti-racism training. Bill?
Yeah, hopefully everyone from the board saw, I know we CC'd all of you, the report that came from the Creative Discourse Group on the listening sessions. I didn't bring that as a topic tonight. They're really to discuss that. They're working forward to have invited all the participants in the listening sessions to join a design group to design community work about how to take action on the 5 themes that they found. Some of that, 3 of those themes will most likely go to the goals committee. Grant, you and I haven't had a chance to talk about that, so as the last meeting, I'm kind of putting the 2 topics together. But we have a goals meeting set too, so I think there's some good work there. They're soliciting, that meeting would start, that group would convene on January 19th to start to do the work and to design a way for the community to come in and give input on the 5 areas of need that were found through the listening sessions. And they would really focus, there are 2 that are specific with equity, so they would focus on those 2, and then 3 for the goals committee. And I know that Sue would like me to, I'll just say here that members out of the goals committee, she was hoping that a few of them might want to be on the design committee for the equity work. So we can talk more about that next week.
And that's setting the goals. They're having a meeting next week. Is that
Yeah.
right? Is that kind of?
Next
Okay.
Thursday.
Next Thursday?
If I read my calendar, it might be wrong.
Monday?
Maybe it's Monday.
Oh, Wednesday.
Aaron, Aaron will tell you if I don't have my calendar open, he'll tell you I don't remember these
This is
things.
for the goals.
Yeah.
That means me, right?
Yeah.
I have it on
Next
Thursday.
Yeah, it's Thursday.
I have it on
It's got to go
Thursday.
on Monday.
Okay.
Thursday?
I
Okay.
have it on
Thursday.
Thursday.
All right. Let me see where I went wrong.
Goals
Yeah, that's
committee is
the
Thursday, 5 to
15th.
6.
Yes. Yep,
And
that's what I have too.
Sue is going to try to join us for that, but she may not be able to, so she and I were to go over the data that was captured.
5 to 6, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I actually have it on my calendar on Monday and Thursday, so I'm covered.
So I just did 2 topics in 1 report.
Great. All right.
So that's actually good news. 2 hours back on Monday.
Look at the smile on
Better
her
not be
face.
Monday.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Negotiation update. Would that be Nilda or who?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, we just set dates for our first meeting.
Okay. And we don't need an executive session or anything, do we? Okay.
No.
Yeah. So dates are being set or have been set.
Yeah.
All right. District liaison officer leadership analysis.
Yeah.
Attachment 7D.
Yep. So I gave you some more analysis right here. I just wanted to go over some of the data and then some of the things that we talked about as a leadership team. As you recall from last time, we said there were 7 instances of the 41 involved students of involved a BIPOC student. That's 21%. As we just saw tonight, our updated demographic data is about 14% of our students are BIPOC. Of those 7 instances, 40% were where we had parent issues, there were parent legal issues, or safety checks. 30% of those, we had students leaving grounds, 20% were substances, and 1 was a fight. All but the fight, we were required to call the DLO by policy or by practice that we've had, especially when a student leaves grounds. We learned probably close to 10 years ago when that didn't happen. We're local parentis, so we have to call everybody under the sun to start looking for a kid when they leave school grounds, and we look for all help. About why these happened, we had, for the fight, we had a parent asked for in the fight that involved the DLO, we asked the parent asked for the DLO to get involved of one of the students, so that was called that way. The substance abuse policy that is currently on the MRUSD requires that we call the police every time that we have a substance abuse policy, and that's done through all our substance abuse policies, all our substance abuse issues. I just talked to you about when students leave ground, and then our parent issues were legal issues in which we needed a DLO to be present. It doesn't mean every parent issue we call that, but they were legal issues that were happening. And I don't really want to go into it too much more. I'm trying to do this all in public sessions, so I'm not doing this in executive. It's important we do it here in this session. The overall question is about bias built into our system, and I will say it exists. But I want to be really clear that the best piece of advice I can give, and I've done it, I had this conversation with the Creative Discourse Group through a coaching piece. John was part of that, is that we really stay with our process that we're in right now. One of the findings that was that came from all the listening sessions was to look at our policies and practices and see what implicit bias were there. That we go through that process with the community to develop an action plan to do that. I can think of actions and know of actions that school districts have done, but we need to continue with our community process. And talking with Creative Discourse Group, even though there are things I know we can jump to tomorrow, it's important to do that work with the community, not go do it and tell the community we did it. And so involve them in that. Because like I said, I can think of things to do right now. And as we've been doing this work, there's many times I've wanted to jump, and I'm glad every time I called Sue or Nadi and said, and they're like, Bill, be patient. We know you know everyone wants to do things. So if the fix is going to come, it's just not going to be overnight. And I want to say that we, as a district, with all data, you as a board, the board should be asking us, how are you looking at this with an equitable lens? And that's the lens you should always be asking for. And from multiple equitable lenses. I will tell you, of the 41 instances, 40 of them had students of poverty in.
Had students what?
Students of poverty. 40 of the 41. And that's not new news for St. Albans. We know we have a huge poverty gap issue. It's really, really large. I don't say that to deflect any of the racial things we're looking at. I just think that was an important piece for you to have that we asked for. So the team did.
Okay. Any questions?
How many of those were emergencies? Like you dialed 911?
We don't dial. We do.
So you don't. But
we don't dial.
My question is, how many of those did you expect an immediate response from, or how many of them were we need a district liaison officer here to?
You're getting to response time.
Yeah, it's response times. That's
so,
because before you said, well, we're not really, it's not, we don't expect an immediate response, right?
if we needed a immediate response, we dial 911, none of them were 911. We never dialed, you know, like, I'll tell you, we had an alarm today in City, well noted, right? That was a 911.
Yeah.
People were there right away.
Yeah.
So if we need we'll go to 911 when we need to. We haven't had to do that I know of with any of these instances. I haven't asked that question, so I don't really have that information in my head. But I will tell you that when today happened, I was the second call after the 911. So, and I didn't have to be the second call, I just happened to be the second call.
In a 911 call, is it always the police liaison that arrives first? Or is
No,
it whoever's closest?
It's whoever's closest.
But in the police liaison report, it's the police liaison.
It's the district liaison
Right.
officer.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will remind you that, I mean, you're talking with Lieutenant Talley, they're down 4 officers right now, and that basically takes one off of every shift.
Is there a metric we could come up with? Like, I know this is district liaison focused, but is there a metric we could come up with that talks about response times in the event of a real emergency, as opposed to response times in the DLO? Because I think you put response times in the DLO on there, it's maybe a little bit misleading, and it shows up as an inflated number. And you know, it's nice to have a rapid response there, but it's not always critical. But there are cases where it is critical.
They're critical, when
that's
students lose school grounds, that's pretty critical.
Yes, right. But that gets absorbed into an average. It's a relatively large number. We see the average.
I mean, I can tell you, when we have those, we already have school personnel out, we're asking for others to come with us.
But it's not really a performance indicator for the system. Like a critical response time would be on a critical incident, right? Which is more like, it's more of acute safety.
Yeah, I don't have the expertise to be able to answer your question.
Okay.
Right. I think the best person that would is probably Lieutenant Talley.
Okay. And I'm not even asking that we have it, I'm just asking if there's a metric that we could have.
And I don't know.
Okay.
We've taken we're collecting a lot of data on all this, and we'll keep doing that data. It's, of any program we have, it's the most amount of data we're keeping.
You said we're down 1, right? Because our contract states we have 2 DLOs.
We have 1.5, we're down to 1, and we're not even getting 1 right now because of their reduction in staff.
So how does that work with our?
Lieutenant Talley's the one that responds, and he's also supervising the shift and doing other things.
But even if, I mean,
if they were fully staffed, we'd have 1.5.
We'd have 1.5.
Yeah.
But they can't.
They can't staff it.
Okay.
The police, like everyone, I mean, everyone I talked to was down staffing, and the police are one of those critical areas that have really been hurt with staffing.
Have we ever been at full 1.5?
We were right after we started the DLO program. And
For a very, very short period of time.
For probably about 5 to 6 months. And then there was a leak, so.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Okay.
I guess my only question would be just making sure that we have the questions and the concerns that Amanda has documented somewhere so we can begin to.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer some of it, I don't have the exact information, but we.
Oh, I don't think we need to answer it now, I'm just saying, making sure that we have documentation of her questions and concerns to make sure that we can respond to that, that's all.
Thank you. All right, item.
Policies.
What?
Next item is governance policies, right?
Yeah, you beat me to it, Nils, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, this is the motion to adopt these policies that we had for first read last meeting. I'm seeking a motion to adopt is it ASO? A50, financial stewardship, A51, board management, A52, performance monitoring and accountability, and A53, risk management policies, please.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All right, Grant,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Nina,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Ryer,
Yes.
Nilda votes yes. Thank you. Next item is C14, Section 504, and ADA grievance protocol for students and staff policy for adoption. I'm looking for a motion to adopt C14, Section 504, and ADA grievance protocol for students and staff policy that was warned for possible adoption on November 16th, 2022. May I have a motion, please?
So moved, Ryer.
Second, Nina.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, Grant,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Nina,
Yes.
Susan, no, excuse me, Joanna,
Yes.
Ryer,
Yes.
Nilda votes yes. Thank you. Next item is new business. We have an early retirement request. You all saw it in your packet. Bill, do you have anything to add?
No, I brought this to you, Nilda, and we said we should put it on. The teacher approached me on the 17th of November, asking for the retirement piece. The side letter says that all requests must be in by October 1st. And this board has in the past approved these. Outside, it's been probably 4 or 5 years from my looking back when that was done. I'm not saying, and by saying that, I'm just giving you information. I'm not pushing you one way or the other.
So I guess I should have a motion to get this open for discussion. So can I have a motion to approve this early retirement request, and then we'll determine what to do with it?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second Ryer.
Thanks, Ryer. Okay, discussion. As I think Bill pointed out, we have done this in the past, but it's been a while because we have some language in place in our side letters to accommodate for early retirement, and those have been in place for about 5 years. I do have a concern that this person has been with our institution for quite some time and wasn't aware that we had deadlines on our early retirement requests. So that's just something I wanted to point out to the group. Does anyone have any comments on this?
Bill, what do you feel about this? I mean, you're sometimes on this, you give us kind of direction.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this?
I believe the association does a really good job of reminding everyone. You can state, yeah. And letting people know. Because I know that they come in usually a few days before October 1st. I think they do a good job of that.
Thank you.
So I think you got to pay attention to what you have to pay attention to. That's my personal belief. When I miss something for myself, I miss something. And I do.
Can I don't know if this, just with the health thing is, I guess my only concern is if that played a part in all of a sudden, like it came up, or if this has been something long, I don't know, like.
I have no idea.
So, not knowing that, I'm certainly inclined to give the benefit of the doubt and say that if there was information that became available to the individual after the deadline and that influenced the decision, we should take that into consideration. Without knowing that, I would just vote my conscience. I don't know.
I have no knowledge. And I keep looking.
You know, Grant, I think if it was a new policy, new process, went into effect this year or maybe even last year, this has been in place for a while.
The policy's been in place for a while, but we're sitting here in December right? Receiving this letter with a due date, with a deadline that was October, correct? And there are some, you know, some costs like for this, right? It may not have been a decision the person could have made in October. And they may not have even been prompted to even think about it in October. We don't have that information. I don't think there's a timeline here that gives us that information. And if, like I said, if it needs a decision tonight, I'm certainly inclined to give the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe that information came about after that deadline.
I think since she put it in there, I kind of agree with
We simply don't know. I mean, if we have to have a decision on this tonight,
Then you have to have a decision.
can we ask for more information?
Can I just ask you a question, Bill?
Yeah.
So I was confused reading this, and I'm even more confused now. So her issue was she thought she wasn't eligible for it because she hadn't worked 20 years. So what's the minimum?
I don't have it. in
It's
front of me.
20 years,
Yeah.
but we have awarded this benefit at a prorated amount for less than 20 years.
Oh,
So is that an option?
So for 20 years, the 20 years, they get the full $12,000.
okay.
We have given this retirement benefit to staff that have less than 20 years, but it's at a prorated amount.
Okay.
And that's been done, that's where I say we're back in the past.
That's very helpful.
So is that an option or is that?
You would need to do the option, but we would take care of that prorating piece. It's whether you want to award it, and I would, you know, I don't know if people heard me, but I'd say, I don't think, is it nice for the person to know tonight? No, yes. Do they have to know tonight? No,
She's
you don't.
retiring at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's up to your decision if you want to take action tonight or if you want to hold on it.
I would just say that there's rules that everyone agrees to play by at the beginning of the year. And I speak out of experience because one time I missed by a day signing up for an increase in my pay when I was over at city school. And I went to the superintendent and I said, one day, and he goes, 24 hours. I didn't get it. I missed that pay raise for a year because I missed the deadline. Deadlines are deadlines.
I'm glad you've had some of the same experiences I have.
Yeah, but
It's
it's
not
not. Well, yeah, but in the past, we've also had, we've put a limit on how many people can retire. We've kind of gone over that a few times too. So.
Do we want to vote on this matter? Do we want to table it? If we table it, is there more information we're looking for? Are we ready to vote?
I'm ready to vote. How do you guys feel?
I'd like to know if there was extenuating circumstances that caused them to miss the deadline.
It's kind of my thing too.
If, I'm willing to vote, but that's
Well,
what, that's
they
what
don't
I
have
like.
to share that with us either.
They don't.
No, but if she's asking us to do
Yeah, I
this,
know.
that's something that she should, if she
No, I know.
wants us to consider it.
Yeah,
Would that have to be an executive session?
I think so.
Well, or you could say, go find that out. Extenuating circumstances to not have to have executive session. I would rather have you do it that way, because I don't think you really have a right to know that health information. I think
But I
you have
don't
a
need
right
to, we don't need to know, but I just,
Right, I think to answer your question, Katie, were there healthy, that I can tell you, and I can say yes or no. I can't
Right.
tell you what they were.
right, nor do we need to.
That way,
Clearly there were because they missed it.
why don't
But did they miss it because of that?
the way, right, and that's a different.
It's important.
Right.
What's the pleasure of the board?
You table it.
Okay, make sure if you're tabling it, you ask for information, because otherwise we are quote unquote kicking the can down the road, to use a term that my friend Peter used earlier.
How does everyone, so move to table the vote pending additional information around the circumstances of,
Why this is late.
missing
I
that.
think that because we have a motion on the docket, we have to vote the motion down, or the maker of the motion and the seconder need to withdraw the motion, and we need a new motion.
No, you can just you can just table it. You can just table it. I'm looking at.
Don't you have to vote to table though?
I don't even think you discussed the table, the motion to table.
You just motion to table, and you just, Robert's rules, you motion to table and you don't even take a vote on it. You just do it.
So Bill, will you get us that information?
I
to
will.
it?
Let's said that we need to know.
Yeah.
Okay, motion, okay, we're gonna table this.
Don't-
Good thing this is my
don't-
first board meeting, because otherwise I'd be embarrassed.
Sorry.
All right. The item we've all been waiting for, the FY25 budget. You have it as attachment 8B. I'm going to turn it over to people that are way smarter than me on budgets, and that is Martha and Bill.
May I take it?
Yeah, you take it and then I'll.
Okay. So I'll start with the first page in the packet, which is a repeat of what you received on the November 2nd board meeting. I'm just bringing this back forward to remind you what we were basing our information on to start our budget process. So on the next pages, I'm actually going to ask you to put the second page behind and go to the third and fourth page, which is the summary of expenditures for that FY24 proposed budget. I have clearly noted on here that this is a draft using the assumptions that were on this page that we presented in November. So this is just to kind of, because we were looking for the board to give us a little bit of direction as to where you wanted us to land with a budget. So this is taking this information from the assumptions and applying it to the actual budget in the format that you're used to seeing in previous budget meetings. So by applying these assumptions to our FY13 adopted budget, we're coming in with an estimated expenditure budget of about 6.81% increase at this point. I just want to be clear that this is not incorporating the request from the school administration at this point. That'll be your next draft. But our target is to work within this percentage that you kind of looked at from the assumptions, correct? Okay. So that's just kind of giving you a flavor of what this might look like. So the last page, the one that I asked you to flip to the back, is kind of putting the same information in the format that I've done in the past, which has a lot of holes, because it has really the only new piece of information on here is the first draft figure, which is the $69,211,000, and that's based on the assumption budget. All the other numbers are basically carried over from last year, because I don't have the education spending figure yet. I gotta go through and figure out what we're going to be receiving in the different local funds, which is the grant funds, which again, I will reiterate, when I put in the figures for the grants, we budget for what we anticipate we will receive, and I try to make sure and not overextend what the grant may come in for. So if we've gotten a grant for $900,000 in the past 3 years, I would not budget more than that figure for the next year, maybe even slightly less, because sometimes they do come in a little bit less. So I make sure that the costs that I've got in the expense budget would match what we think we're going to get in the revenue side of it. Because once you start with your expense budget, you subtract out all those other funds, which includes the grants, which then brings you to your education spending figure. So these figures, again, are just brought over from last year. We don't have equalized pupil counts yet. I did hear from the gentleman at AOE that he was hoping to get the first draft of equalized pupil out this week, but it's now Wednesday and I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not holding my breath.
Martha, with that, are we expecting to see a benefit in that?
A benefit in what?
In the equalized people, are we gonna?
Well,
the prediction
you saw the student enrollment data. It's based on the prior 2 years, but there is that caveat in there, and I think they might still be using it regarding the FY20 student data because of COVID. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the information yet, so I don't know what they're working with.
They might be out of the
We might be out of that.
Holding it flat, because it was 2 years ago that they held flat for an AEM here.
So Bill may have a little bit better sense than I do as to what the equalized pupil counts might come in looking like, but
I think it might go down a little
I
bit,
think
but it's
so.
hard to really model. When I look at that, I've been preluding that we have a lot of pre-K kids that bumped our population, and we have that low population in K through 3 right now. Well, then what you get for an equalized pupil pre-K is 44% of any student that's in K through 12.
So you get less.
While the enrollment looks good, it doesn't really count as much on an
Projected,
AEM student.
Right.
I thought that the way they were determining equalized pupil was changing.
One more year. One more year we'll start doing
Next,
it.
okay, so
Not
that's
this
what I was
budget.
at, I was wondering.
Not this budget year, another budget year.
Okay,
to go.
thank you.
25, yes.
And then will we, I mean, but that's also good information, right? Is the projection for us to see a benefit?
We'll actually go
We're gonna go
first.
the other way?
We're gonna go the other way. We haven't wanted,
So
we do not
good
have.
for us to know. Okay.
So FY '25, your pupil count that they will be using, it won't be called an equalized pupil count anymore, it's gonna be a.
Right.
Average, yeah, it's an ADM. So with all of this information, this is just kind of some general information to kind of get you started in the budget process. I did take a sneak peek at how this would all maybe sugar off as far as the tax rate might go, because we did get information on the yield, which is a piece that, a big piece.
Yeah, that was good first.
And it's being increased, how much was that?
It's about $2,600.
$2,600, which
per
is
dollar.
huge.
Is the yield increasing across the state?
So right now with the assumption budget, expense budget, and using all the other numbers from last year, which we know are not right, the tax rate might be, it could be less 8 cents from last year, possibly. But we know that that's just a,
So it might go down, I'll take it from here. It might go down 8 with what we know there. You'll see underneath on the second page there, all the information that's still outstanding.
Yeah.
So we have a long way to go. It seems that every year when we have this first one, it's really just an expense budget. There's a lot, the revenues play as much or more into changing that tax rate. The other thing that came out of the tax commissioner's letter was that the spending they're seeing happen across the state and local spending needs because of shifting things from grants for student needs into local budgets. So at the next meeting, next week, the principals and I and a few of the directors will be sitting in this room having our almost annual tough December meeting of saying, okay, we took this assumption budget, this was taking what we have that was been in the local budget and just rolling it forward with inflationary targets that you gave us. We'll start to talk about what are the needs and what are the areas that we have concerns about and which of the positions and grants that there are some of those grant positions which are going away after this academic year. Are they important enough to us to say for student needs that we need to put those up somehow? So we'll bring you all that on the 21st. We'll actually hopefully by then have a sneak peek of equalized pupils. It will not be settled. It always takes a month to settle them. But we'll at least have an idea of where we're at. The big thing that we won't have is CLA. And with the interest rate doing what it is, that comes in by that's coming by December 31st. The CLA could have a huge effect. While the yield is lowering the tax rate, probably because of all the CLA, the increase in cost in housing will raise the tax rate. So the tax commissioner warned about that and warned about the local spending. I will tell you that I had a meeting with the Champlain Valley superintendents, pretty much everyone except for 2 districts because they have it in their articles of incorporation. They voted at a different time. But we were one of the lowest first drafts. The drafts ranged anywhere from 5% to 13% on expenditures. So we're at 6.8. We're not the lowest, but we're down there. But I haven't as you as a board asked me last time we were talking about the assumptions and doing it this way, you said, well, what about the needs? And that's what we're working on. And we will bring you those on the 21st of what's not in the budget. I want to let you know that last year, a penny on the tax rate raises about $400,000. It's about 3.5 positions. What I'm going to need, and the leadership team are going to need from you as a board, as a direction, as we start. And I think it's going to happen in January. It's going to be furious, but I want you to know that list of needs on the 21st and start talking about some direction. Is, we'll get you more. Martha will do what she does now, like where are we tax rate wise? Because the cost per equalized pupil, if we had to put it on the ballot today with this expenditure budget, is a 9.6% increase. That's what would be on the ballot with an 8-cent decrease in taxes. Talk about confusing the electorate.
Yes.
Do we know, you talk about CLA, do we know if there's been any more assessment done since last year?
I don't believe any
So
municipality.
we probably aren't gonna do any better than we
Oh, no.
did previously. And we were pretty close to the threshold on,
Yeah.
there
One
was
of
some
the,
that-
one of the
like
municipalities, I want to say it was town, was pretty close to getting to the 80% where they'd have to reassess.
Right,
But the city, I know the city was in good shape, I'm pretty sure Fairfield was too,
okay.
near that 100%.
So we really shouldn't expect much help there.
Oh, I don't know, everything I hear from talking with my colleagues and Martha talks to the business manager, the CLA is gonna go, or go way down, it's gonna charge the tax rate to go up, because of the divisor. Yeah.
So actually, town was actually the one in a better situation. Last year they were at 90%. City is at 84%, and Fairfield was at 84% last year, so.
Thank you for looking that up.
Yeah.
So if they haven't done more accurate, at least in the state's eyes, assessments.
Usually it takes from when you go below 80, it takes a couple of years to get the reassessment done. I don't know if others remember any of that or how that's worked.
So what maybe might be useful is, maybe you've already done this, you probably already have, what would it be if those assessments stayed the same? Can we guess what the CLA is? We can't still, right? Even if we have an idea of where we come in assessment-wise, we still can't guess what we have.
No.
Because it depends on everyone else.
Yes.
It depends on 3 years of the averages of the purchases that have been done within the town.
Because every town in the state
it doesn't
is just
matter
bad,
how, it doesn't
then
matter
everyone's
how,
good. The cost that fails together passes together.
it doesn't matter how your house has changed, because you've lived in your house.
Yes.
It's the sales that drive it.
Right.
For 3 years.
Thank you. I did notice on the agenda that said FY25 budget, that probably should be 24. I think I said FY25 and I thought, geez, time's flying.
Yeah, I was wondering that.
Yeah,
when we were
no,
going
it
over
should be
this morning.
24.
Talk about it, like,
Any more questions related to budget? You guys feel like you need anything more from us right tonight?
No, but I want you to be prepared we could use some help with direction, and if I were gonna make it really simplistic and say nothing else changed, and you saw there was an 8-cent decrease, what would be the pleasure of the board to do with that 8 cents, knowing that we have, and there's its purpose around the grants, and then Alexis will be coming next time to explain the student support system, because all but Alexis and maybe 1 or 2 other people, I shouldn't say all but many of those folks are supported by grants. And we'll need some direction from not on actual programs, but like, what are we doing with the differential here and where's the target for the budget? Because the principals are coming together to say what's the best for Maple Run in their eyes.
But if the differential comes in at the 8 cents, if for every cent we get that closer to 0, that percentage goes up on the ballot chunk too, yes.
Right. Yeah.
So we would want to know like what that is. If we go if 8 cents becomes 7 cents, what's the actual percentage? What's the actual percentage?
We can do that.
Oh, yeah.
We can do
If you
that.
go to 0, you might have a 25%.
Yeah, we can do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we need help that way.
Yeah.
Okay, now that I'm gonna, 8C, governance policies, first reading. This is round 2 of the policies, because we're splitting it out for three phases, I believe. So we have an action. The administration seeks a motion to warn A54, appointment of superintendent, A55, delegation to the superintendent, A56, superintendent authority, A57, superintendent succession policies at first reading for possible adoption at next board meeting on December 21st, 2022. Do I hear a motion? Okay, Grant, thank you. Joanna, thank you. Any discussions? Seems to be all about Bill tonight, but, okay, so no discussion. I'll do vote. Ryer?
Yep.
Peter?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Inilda?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
And
Peter?
is that I'm sorry.
Still
Okay.
yes.
Yourself.
And myself. There we go. Motion carries. So nothing. All right. Nilda, am I doing the next 2 as well? I think so.
Yes, you are.
I think it's just more informational. 8D is the non-school literature distribution policy. It should be in your packet.
So, yeah, there are 3 policies there. One of the things we had a discussion 2 or 3 meetings ago was about some political literature that was distributed at school. And you asked to talk about a policy. And so what I did was I asked a question to all the superintendents in Vermont. There were only 1 or 2 schools that had a political specific policy about distribution of political literature. So you received that. Most of the responses I received from the superintendents is that there's a recommended policy from VSBA about the distribution of non-school literature, so it's more broad. And they give 2 options to a board, that none happens, or that it can happen prior approval by the principal or the superintendent only. So you see those 2, which are model policies from VSBA. I didn't want to put together a first draft without getting some feedback from the board about which direction you wanted to go, but I wanted to give you these pieces.
And we have to have this? Is that
You don't have to have it. It was a discussion that happened about having a policy about the distribution of political literature. And as I said, most of the superintendents who replied to me, they said, when we've encountered this, we have something that's on non-school related literature distribution. And it's a recommended policy for VSBA, and they would use, if they had the issue that we had, they said that would come under that policy. There wouldn't need to be one that's specific to political. But I wanted to make sure I gave you my research. So I gave you 2 superintendents, and one being Champlain Valley responded and said, we actually have one that talks about, that has titled political solicitation. But just trying to give you back what you asked for work to be done.
Good. Any questions? Grant, I see something going on up there.
Well, I'm wondering if it's great having this. I'm wondering, since there are so many options, I don't know if that was expected, but where I go is maybe the teacher-student perspective might be valuable here. Maybe not.
I'm not following.
Yeah, maybe they're.
Well, you know, they're the ones that might be impacted by non-school related materials most closely. And I would want to know how they would be impacted.
So in looking at these.
It's always dangerous talking while you're thinking.
I know. You, especially coming from you, but it's all good.
I don't think it's critical to get that feedback, but
No,
anyone on the board.
Can you give an
share
example?
that.
Like, what do you, I guess?
You know, I mean, the political stuff, you know, if people feel there's benefit to receiving that information, that type of information, and we're saying no, or if they feel like it's almost freedom of speech kind of concept, which I don't think it is, but, you know, there's a perception out there that may not align perfectly with the practice. And I don't want it to be an unintended consequence.
So you're saying, you're proposing that the individual teacher makes the decision what comes into their classroom?
Or, the teachers are maybe secondary, it's the students that are receiving the information of whatever being distributed.
I'm assuming this is bulletins.
I tend to think at least at the high school level, these are pretty capable young adults, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to have.
Can I ask, like, what I'm thinking is like maybe mail that's coming into your mailbox if you're a teacher, or or posters or information that might be put on like a bulletin board within a staff room? Is this
Or
what
someone
we're talking
handing
about?
out,
Like,
So this is non-school sponsored literature, so
I
where you are right now, you're in the school sponsored, if I'm understanding it.
Not necessarily.
Because if I'm doing something with a class or with a club and we say we're doing this, that's what they're doing. The non-distribution of non-school literature is, let me step out of the political bat for a minute.
If I'm a non-for-profit putting on an
Right.
event and I want to post something on a bulletin
Right,
board.
so some schools say you can't do that
Right.
in the state of Vermont.
Right.
I've been in half the district I've worked in, you can't do that.
right.
We do not, because everyone comes to you and wants to use the kids as a way to distribute it. Because what happens is, you get to the nonprofit, but then you get to the one that I'm doing X athletic, because I don't want to pick on one.
Sure.
And I'm gonna have this camp this summer. And I want you to give that to all the kids.
And there's a fee.
And there's a fee.
Yep.
And they may be for profit or non-for-profit. There's, so there's that type of issue. Some people say no, some people, and that's option A. Option B is, I get to check. I as superintendent or I as principal, but only those two people get to say, sure, that looks like a good event that would benefit kids, it's not school sponsored, we'll send it out.
I think I feel differently about the political versus,
I was thinking outside organizations.
That's what I'm talking about, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, some of them are inside people also creating.
But it would have to be related, it would have to be related to school, so the teacher would have to be handing it out because it's related to their curriculum.
It's related to a curriculum or related to a school-sponsored
Or school
club.
event.
A school-sponsored club, I want to say it that way, athletics, co-curriculars. If it was, hey, and I'm going to go where Joanna just went, I used to work for Morrisville Soccer, so I'm going to pick on myself. So I was a coach for Morrisville Soccer. It's not sponsored by the school. It was a soccer club. We wanted to give stuff out. The Morrisville school system said, we don't take any of that. But I worked for Morristown School District. I still couldn't give it out. Okay. If B was there, in another district I was in, they would have said, sure, we give it all out. If we think it's good and something good that's gonna help kids, they'll bring it. Principal approves it.
that's where like I said, where I'm feeling icky is the political side. Like I feel like that's where you start, like the stuff you guys are talking about, I get, but I think my thought is the principal can okay it, or the superintendent, but the political stuff is where I'm getting stuck.
Right, and so then I brought you the last one, that's from Champlain Valley.
Right.
They do advertising and political solicitation, but this is pretty easy to edit.
Right.
If you wanted to have something that's just political. It's the closest one I could find that was in the state of Vermont. I did have a superintendent send me one from another state, but the references to other state laws, I was like, I'm not even gonna research that. But, and that was approved, this still is approval by principal. You don't have to have it that way, I'm just trying to, and if you don't want to tackle it, that's fine too. I was just trying to help you out with bringing some resources in.
No, I think the superintendent or the principal makes the decision. I think that covers all the bases. I know as a teacher, I didn't follow that. I brought it to people who were extremely conservative because she told me she was going to come in and teach the Constitution, which I thought, that's great. And she did. She didn't try to recruit the kid to become young Republicans. She just taught the power of the Constitution. She gave each a little constitutional handbook. So I should have asked Joan, but I didn't. is my confession.
Hear that, Joe?
Yeah. That's why Joe's leaving. But I think clearing it to the superintendent or the principal, who is ultimately in charge of everything in that building, makes great sense.
I think the issue there, right, is the issue that you had was an issue that happened with the person who had permission from the principal to distribute political stuff, right? And not really distribute it, but we don't have to go into it.
I don't know if I have permission because I didn't ask.
No, not you, I'm sorry.
Right.
When you brought up the issue the last meeting, right, that was something that was
Right.
brought up, that was, the person had permission from the
Okay.
principal, and it happened at every school. And so the issue then is, I mean, I don't think that's a good idea. I think if we're gonna say no political speech, you gotta say no political speech. Because then what you're gonna run into is the issue of a principal having to like say no to someone, and then if they say yes to someone else, then you have an issue where there's a huge issue. I mean, I don't think we should be putting a principal in the position where they're approving or disapproving things, because
So who do you think?
no, if we're gonna say no political speech, or we have an issue with political speech, we should say no political speech. I mean, that's really easy. But then that falls into a whole bunch of other things. We have issues with people at games when, you know, there's homecoming and there's political candidates at the homecoming games. That's enough, then what do you do there? Are you gonna kick them out of the stadium? You're gonna say, no, you can't come in, or you can't distribute that, and if we catch you, we're gonna do something?
Put you in there.
Yeah, I mean, so I think this is an overarching thing. This is huge overarching things.
And I'm not looking to rush.
Right, yeah, no, I get
I
that.
want you to hear that.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I 100% behind, like, we don't want political speech in schools, but out, let's kick it out. I'm cool with that. But
Hey, Nina, this isn't even an action item for tonight. So can we just look at it as Bill has gotten a sense of where the board's at, and he can come up with a draft for us to review at another meeting?
Okay, what Nelda said.
Yeah.
Ryer, what do you thought? You move forward with this?
yeah, no, I
Yep.
either way.
I got some information. I may not have something to you back until January, but.
Okay, yeah,
That's
so
some work to do.
unless there's any opposition.
So we'll hold this meeting next meeting.
Okay. Are you opposed to that?
No, I'm in favor of that.
Nelda, we'll move forward with that. So Bill's gonna do some homework, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Nina, I'm just gonna tell you that my iPad's losing juice, so I'm gonna have to switch to my phone. So if I get lost in transition, I'll be back.
You got it, Nelda. Okay. 8E, weapons policy, I don't know, possible first reading?
It should be a first reading, warrant is a first reading.
Oh, okay, so I need an action?
Yeah.
Okay, so I need an action, sorry. The administration seeks a motion for first reading of the weapons policy. Oh, am I doing
Weapons
it?
policy, yeah.
Yeah, weapons.
Policy
C51, okay. Could I have an action, I'm sorry, motion, I'm getting tired.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd just like to present this as
Sure.
there was confusion, as you know, between our weapons policy and our firearms policy. If you look under the sanctions section, it said, this policy is almost exactly what it was. There's one change. I want to be really deliberate with you. It says, any student who is in violation of this policy may be brought by the superintendent to the school board for an expulsion hearing. I added the next sentence. If a student is in possession of a firearm on school grounds, per statute, the superintendent is required to bring the student to the school board for an expulsion hearing. That's all I did to this. I'm trying to put clarity in this.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
And you changed that from principal to superintendent?
It's always been superintendent.
Oh,
It was just,
okay. I'm sorry, I thought that there was an issue with,
No,
No.
it's my responsibility. It's not the principal's responsibility for board hearings.
okay, gotcha.
Last time we spoke in detail about threat assessment, is that part of, not the policy, but part of the procedure?
Part of the procedure, and I can tell you that I've been working with the St. Albans Police Department, and we have it in draft form, and I hope we'll be bringing you a procedure for the firearms policy at the next meeting, just to let you know as a point of information.
Thank you.
May I get clarification just for a second, Bill? So I remember you saying before that with regard to a firearm on school grounds, that is not in policy to call the police department, but if a student is possession of a substance, that goes directly to the police department.
That's where your policies stand right now that we call the police department for substance. If it's in violation of alcohol, drugs, or tobacco.
Was that removed from this?
No, it wasn't, it's not in this policy, it's a different policy.
Oh, the calling the police.
About a drugs violation.
Well, I mean about the weapons.
About the weapons,
Or about
it's
the-
not in policy, that's why Peter was asking about, I said, I have told you, and I have to be careful of our conversations and where we've had them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I did inform you that I'm drafting a procedure, as I just said, and I'll have that for you the next time on how the procedure is to follow C5, the firearms policy.
That's the firearms policy.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
This is
Sorry,
how
I was
it's been
confused.
policy.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other types of weapons that we would want to have require an expulsion hearing?
I do not think so.
Not explosives, not.
Knives.
No, you definitely don't want that last one.
No.
Yeah, everybody.
This is
Explosives comes to mind.
I would say not.
Okay.
Being a former
Call question.
Oh, okay.
What?
Good
Being a
call.
former chemistry
Being
teacher.
a former chemistry student, I agree with you.
All right, any more discussion?
Mays and shalls are very important.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I'm feeling a little dense right now too. So firearms will be a call to the police?
That's a
but not
procedural piece
Procedural,
for the firearms procedure that I'm putting together right now.
It's on a different policy.
no, he's saying it's on a procedure, not a
Mhm.
policy.
Sorry, but it's on
And
a.
so I'm trying to gain clarification. So we have within our drug and alcohol policy
Yes,
that we call law enforcement.
yes,
But we do not have it in our policy for weapons or for firearms that we call law enforcement.
that's correct.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
What would say I kind of agree.
As it was currently written.
We take our policies from VSBA draft. And that's where those came from.
And so both of them, I should say, all three of them are model policies?
I believe so, I have not checked in the latest model.
Okay, that would be something that I just want to look at.
But it's also a different, it's not illegal for them to have a firearm. It is illegal for them to have drugs.
That's
It
correct.
is
So that's the
illegal for them
difference.
to have a firearm on school
No, it's
grounds.
not.
No, it's not illegal, it is against
illegal.
school policy.
That's correct, I have to
Right.
correct you,
Remember,
that's
it's-
right, it's
it's
not
in there.
illegal.
School policy,
Right.
which is what we're talking about. So our school policy is saying, I hear the new, I'm also talking while I'm thinking. I'm hearing the new, the differences, okay? So for school policy, that still stands though, that our drug and alcohol policy has one route of contact, but our weapons and firearms policy does not. So, okay.
And that, yeah.
If the firearm though is in plain view, that is illegal. If it's on school grounds, because I know you cannot walk in front of a school with a gun, that's
Right,
illegal.
right. A staff member can.
No, not even just a person
Not-
walking down the sidewalk.
On
walking
school
in front of the
grounds,
school.
on school grounds, but, in Vermont, actually, yes, you could have it on school grounds.
If you could, let's, or if
If
you have the
you-
one concealed.
Because we do not have, we are.
Concealed.
Concealed or open, frankly, you could have it, Vermont state law, I had this conversation with Lieutenant Talley. I mean, we're wandering off the policy
That's
right now,
right.
but.
Well, it's important policy, to Joanna's point, whether or not the policy should be to call a police officer. If it's illegal, you should, but.
But it's not illegal in the
Right.
state of Vermont.
Right. So this discussion of legality.
Well, it's part of it because, I mean, all of our students, none of them are of age to have any of the drug and alcohol.
Right, that's correct.
So that's where it is.
Yeah,
Because you can still have a gun, right?
you can still have a gun as
Okay,
a.
so that's where the police have to come in because it's legally against the law,
Right.
no matter what.
Right.
Gotcha.
Some of the liberal gun laws in the country
Right.
And Vermont. Vermont has, yes, very,
Okay,
very
right.
liberal gun laws.
Right, and so, you know, if we're looking at, yeah, so I just wanna, I wasn't sharing an opinion. I was looking for clarification.
No, I get it. You're good.
Mine's much different, so I
And
get you.
Katie, just for verification, drugs are illegal no matter what age you are?
Well, no,
No.
not drugs. It's not.
Excuse me.
Not
Well,
alcohol.
alcohol is not illegal,
Alcohol is
marijuana is
not
not
illegal.
illegal.
That might be-
Prescription drugs are not illegal.
What? Weed is, if you're not
No, it's
18,
not.
isn't it?
Well, right,
Twenty-one,
Yeah, but that's not my.
but that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
but
okay.
it's not an illegal substance.
No, I know, I'm sorry. I know. I was just, she said, so I'll forget it.
Prescription medication is not
I'm kidding.
illegal.
All right, so weapons policy, first reading, take a vote. Ryer?
Yep.
Peter?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Nilda?
Oh, yeah.
Jack?
I think we lost Jack.
Okay,
Just send me a
and
note.
Nina?
Oh, Jack stepped off.
Oh, okay, okay, so it's Nina, so it's still 1600. Okay, and Nilda, go ahead for other.
All right, next item on our agenda is our new 6F, which is an employment matter. And I'm just gonna make the announcement and I'll let Bill talk to it. We received notification that Brett Blanchard will be retiring as principal of Bellows Free Academy at the end of the school year. Bill, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, Brett informed me yesterday that he had made the decision, and Brett, I'm sorry, I should have asked you today, but I think it's at least 30 years, if not close to 35, 40 years of great service to education. So I first want to say thank you for all those years of service. And thank you for turning on your screen there. So, and didn't know if you wanted to say anything, Brett. You're on mute right now.
Yeah, no, I've been in education 35 years, and this has been an amazing staff and student body. So for me, it's been a great pleasure. It really has been. It's unusual to have kind of a staff that generally gets on board completely. You usually get a certain percent that don't. So for me, it's been a real joy. And then at this phase, there's certain factors. Just seems best after 35 years to go in a new direction at the end of June.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you so much.
Brett, thank you. Yeah.
All right,
Nilda, can I just do something real quick?
sure thing.
Aaron, did we miss something on the agenda?
Because there's something attached, isn't
The leave request?
That was after the agenda was posted.
That was after the agenda.
Post didn't add that item to this agenda.
Oh. Okay, I'll take care of it.
What's the issue?
I had something that I should have had you put on the agenda that we did not get into the agenda revisions for a personnel matter that needs a leave, but I'll take care of it.
Okay. Thank you.
And we'll correct it at the next meeting and I'll take care of the personnel.
All right, moving on to other business, we have warrants. I need a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of this motion will act as authorization and signature of any individual board member participating remotely. May I have that motion, please?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Anyone?
Grant.
Grant did.
Oh, thank you. All right, we're gonna take a roll vote. Grant,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes?
Nina,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Fryer,
Yes.
Nelda votes yes. Superintendent's report.
The only thing else, I've done a lot of talking tonight, so the only thing I have to add is a thank you to a former parent of City School, Chris Rose, donated several musical instruments to the school, so
Awesome.
it's really nice thing to do.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the board announcement. Hearing none, I'm going to move on to agenda for future meetings with the non-political flags and flag pole. Any other business that needs to come before the board? Hearing none, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and the time is 8:35. Thank you.